Good morning, everybody. We're live here from the birdhouse. It is Tuesday, March 5th. We are getting into March already, and it's feeling like spring here, at least in upstate New York. The sun's been shining. We've got flowers that are popping up. So we're definitely feeling like spring. It looks like it's going to dip down a little bit as far as temperatures go. But the birds are starting to sing. I've been hearing cardinals singing, the robins, the tufted titmouse, they're all singing their little hearts out. The Carolina wren, like my little background here, I've been hearing them singing in the mornings. So it's been a really fun time of the year. You can tell that the birds are starting to get ready for mating season. And we've been hearing reports of them checking out houses. So we've been hearing reports of bluebirds checking out their bird houses, woodpeckers going in and out of cavities in trees, checking out some nesting locations. So on Saturday, we'll be talking about cavity nesting birds that you can attract using bird houses and the differences between all of them. So we'll be talking about that on Saturday. Today, though, talking about mimics, the thrushes, and the crows. So this is a few different groups of birds here that we can find in the upstate New York area. And I thought I would go over what they are and if it makes sense, how you can attract them to your backyard. Some of them you can attract to the backyard. Some of them are a little bit more difficult, but you never know what you'll see in your yard. Just like when you're going out hiking or going out in nature, you never know what you might come across. As always, we love to know who is on. You can say hi in the comments. If you have questions, you can throw those in there too. And we love to know what kind of things you're seeing and hearing. We've been hearing some reports too of insects buzzing around. So some of the bees are starting to come out. I was wondering with yesterday, the temperatures were it reached 70. So I was kind of wondering if my mason bees were going to start to come out, which would be pretty early. They usually don't come out until mid-April. But I didn't see any activity over by the mason bee houses yesterday, but I was a little curious, and it'll be interesting to see with it being so mild if they come out earlier than usual. So let us know what kind of things you guys are seeing and hearing in your yards. Absolutely. I should also mention, if you haven't marked your calendar yet, make sure to mark your calendar for the 12th and 13th of April. We have Stan Tequila coming into town. On the 12th, which is a Friday, he'll be giving a totally free presentation based on his book, Owls, the Majestic Hunters. Really, really cool, fascinating book. Stan has taken thousands of pictures of owls, and he has a great presentation around his photography and talking about owls and all of their intricacies and some neat, fascinating facts about them. That is going to be completely free at Whitehaven Memorial Park. If you're not in the area, we will be streaming it live also. But then after the talk, he'll be doing a book signing, and then the following day, he'll be doing a book signing here at the store, here at the birdhouse, and that'll be the morning of Saturday, April 13th. So we might have some other things going on with Stan too that we'll announce as we get closer to the date. But make sure to mark your calendar because that's going to be a lot of fun. So as far as the mimicking birds go, we do have some different birds in the area that are considered the mimics. So they are all in this family of mimicking birds. And there's 3 different species that we have here in Western New York. And it's going to be the mockingbird, the northern mockingbird, the gray catbird, and the brown thrasher. So that's these 3 right here. I've got pictures of each one. They're kind of large bodied. They're about the size of robins or so. They kind of have long tails. The brown thrasher is pretty large, but they're all decently sized birds. You might know the gray catbird pretty well. You might get it in your yard. Out of the 3 mimicking species, this is the one you're most likely to get in your backyard, especially if you are putting out Oriole feeders, because they are known to eat oranges. They'll come to grape jelly, so they will eat some of those foods that you put out for the Orioles. I've been getting more great catbirds than I do orioles recently in the past few years. So I've been having really good luck with great catbirds. But definitely, if you want to attract them, the best thing you can do is put out that grape jelly in the spring when it is oriole time, which is going to be very late April, early May. We get questions quite often about, are the birds going to come earlier? Am I going to start to see hummingbirds, this month because it's been so mild? Or am I going to start to see orioles? And the answer to that is no. I mean, they're still a couple months away. They're still pretty far down south. It takes a while for them to make that journey up north. And while it has progressively over time been becoming earlier and earlier, we're not going to all of a sudden see them showing up in March or in April in any kind of numbers. It's going to be about the same as it is every year. But over time, you might notice that it is slowly progressing, where you might see them a few days earlier than you normally do, but it's not going to be this giant gap of time where all of a sudden they're a month early or something like that. The trip is very long. It takes them a while to do it, and there's not really a way for them to expedite that migration, if that makes sense. So your birds will still come back around the same time every year, but it would be interesting to see if they start slowly changing. If you are one of those people who keeps track of what day you saw what bird in your yard each year, be curious to know if that is starting to slowly get earlier and earlier. So definitely keep us in the loop about that. But great catbirds we'll start to see in May, around the same time as we start to see the orioles. And they get their names because they do have a little meow kind of call when they're doing their calls. At the very end of it, there tends to be a little sound that sounds like a meow. Gray catbirds are mimic, like this whole group of birds are, which means they do mimic the calls of other birds. And gray catbirds, when they're doing their mimicking calls, they will repeat the call once and move on to the other one. Whereas something like the brown thrasher, which is this bird right here, they will do their call twice in a row. So they'll mimic the bird call twice in a row before moving on to their next song. And the northern mockingbird tends to repeat its call 3 times that it's mimicking. So the mockingbird will do a call 3 times in a row, move on to the next one, move on to the next one, move on to the next one. So that's another way to identify these birds by sound. Is the gray catbird will repeat the sound only once and move on. And they have that meow call at the end of their repertoire. Brown thrasher repeats the song twice, and the northern mockingbird will repeat it 3 times. So that's another way to identify them by sound. Gray catbirds you can attract with the jelly and with the oranges. Brown thrasher don't really come to bird feeders so much. I've seen a couple in my yard over the years underneath the bird feeders, just like usually in the early spring, probably when they're migrating through, super hungry. So they might eat some scraps up from underneath their feeders. They'll come to bird baths here and there as well. So a bird bath would really be the best way to attract a brown thrasher, but they're not your most typical backyard bird, but they are around. And they've got that nice, really long tail. They're a pretty large bird, larger than the gray catbird and the mockingbird, but really neat bird there. And then the northern mockingbird, they will sometimes come to bird feeders as well, especially if you have those oriole feeders out. They'll sometimes eat the grape jelly. They'll eat fruit. They'll eat mealworms. So you can sometimes get them with something like the bugs, nuts, and fruit log that has the mealworms in it and it has the fruits in it. They'll sometimes eat that. And then they'll sometimes come to those oriole feeders as well. Mockingbirds have those bright white wing patches. You can see that in this picture here in the top right. When they're in flight, you can see those bright white patches, and that's a good way to identify them. And they really do a lot of singing. Now, not technically in the family of mimics, European starlings also do mimic those, so I thought I would bring them up. We've shown videos in the past of all the different things that European starlings can mimic. They're really, really interesting if they're raised in captivity, if they're raised around people. They can mimic voices, they can mimic sounds of cars and all kinds of different things. So European starlings, they're not in that mimicking family of birds, but they do have that mimicking ability. They're actually a type of myna bird, so they're closely related. They're in this myna bird family, which are known to mimic. So a bird that's not native to the area, and so it's not closely related to our mimicking birds, but they do have that ability to mimic, which is pretty interesting. And myna birds, you're not going to see anywhere around here. They're more in Africa, but they are common in different aviaries and things and zoos. If you happen to check out some different zoos, you might see some myna birds. So those were the mimicking birds that we have. And then there are the thrushes. And the two most common thrushes that you'll find in your backyard are going to be the American robin and the eastern bluebird. And so some of the thrushes you can attract pretty easily to your backyard. Bluebirds are one that people have luck with getting. It can be hit or miss because bluebirds do like wide open areas. So they like meadows, fields, things like that. If you've got a lot of trees or woods around you, you might not have luck with getting the eastern bluebirds. They are cavity nesters, so they do come to nest boxes and they will nest inside there. That's where they'll lay their eggs and raise their young. They will also eat mealworms. They're an insect eater. They eat a lot of insects and fruit. And so putting out mealworms is the best way to attract them to a feeder. But then they'll also come to bird baths as well. People have some good luck with getting bluebirds coming to bird baths, especially in the wintertime with heated bird baths. That's a really good way of attracting them. And this is what the juveniles look like here on the left. That is your juvenile bluebird. There are differences between the male and the female adults. On the bottom here, the male is on the left. They're just a brighter blue. The female's on the right. She's kind of more like a powdery blue color, not nearly as bright as the males are. But this is one of our earliest nesting songbirds. Wouldn't be surprised if later on this month they start nesting, because they will sometimes start nesting in the month of March, especially if things are mild like they have been. So if you see any bluebird nesting activity, absolutely let us know. We'd love to keep you in the loop of when they're starting to show those signs of nesting around here. And then there's the American robin. The American robin won't necessarily come to bird feeders because they tend to eat a lot of insects and worms. You can attract them sometimes with mealworms, especially live mealworms. If you have them on some kind of a tray feeder, especially a tray feeder that's low to the ground, they'll come to those. But they will come to bird baths. A bird bath is really the best way to attract robins. That and not spraying your yard with any kind of pesticides or things like that. So they'll have plentiful insects and worms to eat. But they will just do their own thing. If you've got any kind of backyard, open space with lawn, you've probably gotten yourself some American robins. And really the best way to get more and to keep them around is to provide a water source, because they do love to splash around in a bird bath. There are other species of birds that are in that thrush family, and I'll show you some of them that we do have around here. One is called a veery. Veery, you're probably not going to get in your backyard, but during migration season, you might see some of these just passing through. You never know what you'll find in your backyard. I've had a veery in my backyard once, just hanging out, sitting on the back fence. Sometimes I think too, when you have bird feeders out and there's all this bird activity just kind of around the feeders, it tends to draw in more birds to check out and see what's going around. So if you've got your feeders out, keep an eye out for some of these other thrushes. They might not be right there at your feeders, but they might be hanging around your yard. Kind of the same situation with the brown thrasher. It was just kind of hanging out underneath the feeder, hopping around in the bushes. So you never know what you might find in your backyard. So veery are another type of thrush. They are pretty light brown. Some of the other thrushes you'll see are darker in color, but they're pretty light brown. They don't have that much speckling on them either. Some of the thrushes that we have are very, very speckled, but we do have veery around. If you've got a lot of trees and woods, you have a pretty good chance of having some veery around. There's also what's called the gray-cheeked thrush, definitely more of an olive color, grayish in color, and it doesn't have a ring around its eye. So there's different ways to, some of these thrushes look very similar to one another, and there's different ways to identify one from the other. The gray-cheeked thrush does not have a ring around its eye, and that's one way to identify it in comparison to some of these other ones like the Swainson's thrush here, which does have a ring around its eye, which you can see there. It's got a nice buffy colored eye ring, as they would call it. And it's definitely more olive in color. So the gray-cheeked thrush, very gray. Swainson's thrush is very olive in color. And then the hermit thrush. This is one that you're likely to see if you spend any time outdoors hiking, birding. Hermit thrush are pretty common. They have some pretty dark speckling on their chest, and then they have a very reddish colored tail, and that's a really good identifying characteristic in comparison with the rest of the color on their body. If you look at their body, they're pretty brown in color, and then they have that reddish colored tail, which is pretty differently colored than their body. So that's a good way to identify them. So that is the hermit thrush, and they're seen around here sometimes even in the winter. They're going to be more of a migratory bird that we see here in the spring and summer, same as the gray-cheeked thrush, Swainson's thrush. But sometimes hermit thrush, I've seen them here in the wintertime, not very often, but here and there you can come across them. This is one of my favorites. This is the wood thrush, another migratory bird. They'll start coming in around May, and they are very speckled, very, very speckled. They can be kind of secretive and hard to see, but you can usually hear them. They have a really beautiful song that will echo through the woods, and they can be found really any place that has a lot of woods and a lot of trees. You can probably hear the wood thrush more than you'll see the wood thrush, but they're a beautiful little bird. So those are some of the thrushes that we do have that come through the area. And then there's the crows. We'll wrap up with the crow species that we have around here. There are the 3 different kind of things that get associated with crows, and then we've got some other species that are in that crow family. The most common crow that you'll see around here is the American crow. They're pretty large. They will form huge, huge flocks. Sometimes you can get them at bird feeders. Some people do if they put out big, especially big tray feeders with things like corn in them and sunflower seeds, stuff with fruit will attract the crows. They eat just about anything. They will eat seeds, they eat insects, they eat small reptiles, small mammals. So they eat a very, very diverse and varied diet. Crows are pretty cool because if you do get them coming to feeders, if you do provide them with some food, something that they tend to do here and there is give gifts to people too. They'll leave especially shiny reflective things around, sometimes little pieces of foil or just anything that's a little metal shiny type of trinket. If you're seeing some weird little metal things appearing in your yard, it could be from American crows. They are known to leave gifts for people, which is pretty fun. So this is the American crow. We also have a type of crow called the fish crow, which is smaller than the American crow, but sometimes I found that they will flock together. They'll be in the same mixed flocks. If you think of American crows, and they kind of have a deep voice when they're with their call. They've got that really, really well-known kind of caw that they'll kind of yell, if you will, when they're in trees or flying overhead. The fish crow have a really nasal, kind of high-pitched call, so they sound significantly different. They almost sound like a squeaky toy, like a dog toy or something like that. Really high-pitched kind of call. They're smaller than the American crow, and like their name suggests, they're more common by the water, so you can find them, especially out by the lake and any kind of big body of water. You can find the fish crows, but they will also hang out with the American crows. And then there's the raven. Ravens are significantly bigger than crows. They have a much larger, thicker bill, and they have even a deeper voice than the American crow. Not as common as the crow, but there's patches of them around. So they're not completely uncommon. They're going to be pretty common out west, but we do have patches of them here in Western New York. And then also in the crow family are the blue jays, and this is going to be the most common crow that you can get in your backyard. Crows are known for being very smart. Blue jays are very smart. If you've fed blue jays with any kind of regularity, you probably find that if you let your feeders empty out and you don't keep them full, and the blue jays are used to eating from them every day, they'll squawk at you. They'll perch by the feeders or perch and look inside your house and squawk at you. We hear reports of that all the time, which is pretty funny. But blue jays love peanuts in the shell. So any kind of peanuts are great for them. They'll also eat sunflower seed and sunflower hearts. But the thing they really love the most are peanuts in the shell. And you can provide peanuts in the shell in different ways, different types of feeders. An open kind of platform is always good for peanuts in the shell. We have some feeders that look like wreaths, metal wreaths that you can put peanuts in there for the blue jays. And then we also have some that are like tube feeders that the birds can perch on and pull out the peanuts. So we've got quite a few now peanuts in the shell feeders for the blue jays. The thing is if you're trying to attract blue jays, especially with the peanuts, you want to make sure it's something that has a lot of perching room. Not all the feeders that are made for peanuts have a lot of perching room on them. So if you want to get blue jays, make sure that it's got a lot of room for them because they're such a big bird. They need that to land on. And then there's the gray jay, especially if you are in northern New York. We don't have the gray jays here in western New York, but out by the Adirondacks, they can be found. They're well known for raiding picnic sites and things like that. They're not very scared of people at all. They'll get very close to people, like this photo on the left shows. But gray jay are another species that we have here in New York. Actually, I should be calling them Canada jay. They were called gray jay for years, and now the new name is the Canada jay. So they are another species that are here in New York. But that is everything I have for you guys today. If you have comments or questions, you can throw those in the comments. We'd love to know what kind of things you're seeing. Of course, you can put those in the comments. Stephanie says, I get gray catbirds in my Oriole feeders for sure. So Stephanie gets gray catbirds coming to her Oriole feeders, just like I do. Yes, I get more catbirds and Orioles, it seems like, over the past couple of years. Marianne Rodriguez is on and says hi from Florida. Stephanie says the minor birds in Maui are an invasive species as the starlings are here. Interesting. She says they're noisy too. So it sounds like Maui has minor birds that are also considered invasive. Our starlings that we have are an introduced species and considered invasive. So it sounds like the minor birds are pretty good at adapting to new and different environments that they're not normally in. Steel Monkey says, I love the gray catbird. My wife refers to him as the James Bond bird because he's so slick looking. LOL. Yeah, I agree. They're pretty cool. Another good way to get things like gray catbirds and the northern mockingbirds, especially the mockingbirds, they seem to really like vines, like grapevines, things like that. They'll nest in grapevines. They'll eat the fruits from grapevines. So having some kind of viney plants can sometimes help also to keep them in your backyards. Let's see. Steel Monkey also says, I just wanted to add that I put out some blueberries like you suggested, and they were a hit. Thanks. Okay, perfect. That's great. So yeah, if you're looking for some different things to add to your backyard offering, fruit is always something you can do. If you've got the peanuts out there, the sunflower seed, suet, the mealworms, and you're looking for something else to add, you can add fruit. And it sounds like Steel Monkey had some good luck with some blueberries. So that is everything I have for you guys today. Remember to keep April 12th on your calendars for the Stan Tequila appearance. He is the author of this Birds of New York book as well. But this talk that we're having him in town for is going to be for owls. He's talking about the majestic owls and promoting his book, Owls, the Majestic Hunters, which is full of awesome photos. And we also have eclipse glasses. We have all kinds of eclipse stuff here at the store. We have individual glasses. We have 4 packs of glasses. We have little books like this that come with glasses. And we also have the kits that you can attach to your cell phone to take a picture of the eclipse. So if you are in anywhere in the Rochester area or Buffalo area, you guys are going to be right in the totality of the eclipse. And everybody is going eclipse crazy here in Rochester. Everybody's excited for it. We have all kinds of eclipse stuff here. You can shop some of it online on our website, which is thebirdhouseny.com. You can pop in to see what we have. And as we get closer, we'll be promoting some different eclipse events as well. So it's only about a month away. Everybody is very excited about that. So it looks like that's everybody's comments and questions for the day. We'll be back on Saturday with another broadcast. And until then, have a great week and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.